One was a brilliant PhD candidate at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The other, a promising master's student at the prestigious Yale University with a bright future ahead. But on a winter night in 2021, 8 chilling gunshots echoed through the snowy air of New Haven, shattering the peace and turning their lives upside down. One fell to the ground, blood soaking into the white snow. The other vanished without a trace. The U.S. police were immediately thrust into one of the most complex investigations in years. The suspect was known to have an extremely high IQ, meticulous methods, and an almost perfect ability to disappear. After the crime, he seemed to vanish from the face of the earth, as if he had never existed. New Haven, located in southern Connecticut, is a coastal city known for its rich cultural heritage and scenic beauty. But its greatest pride is being home to Yale University, one of the most prestigious academic institutions in the world. The case we're about to uncover took place in this very city. Kevin Jiang, a 26-year-old Chinese American, was kind, energetic, and remarkably accomplished. He was pursuing a master's degree at the Yale School of the Environment and was set to graduate soon. Born on February 14, 1994 in Iowa, he was the son of Liu Zhen and Jiang Mingchen, both immigrants from China. He spent most of his childhood in Chicago. After his parents divorced, he lived with his mother, Liu Jin, and became a devoted Christian. In 2012, thanks to his outstanding academic record, Kevin was accepted into the University of Washington and joined the U.S. Army National Guard. 4 years later, he graduated with honors and earned a bachelor's degree in environmental science. In 2019, he received an admission letter from Yale University and embarked on a new academic journey. He also purchased a home in West Haven, just a 10-minute drive from campus, and invited his mother to live with him. Kevin's life in New Haven was fulfilling and joyful. Beyond his studies, he actively participated in extracurricular activities and was particularly gifted in music and piano. Friends described him as warm-hearted, enthusiastic, and full of positive energy. As a former soldier and a reservist in the National Guard, he had a strong sense of justice and was deeply committed to volunteering. He often cooked meals for the homeless and was always ready to lend a hand to anyone in need. To those who knew him, Kevin was the kind of friend you could always count on. At the end of January 2020, Kevin traveled to Norwalk, Connecticut to attend a church retreat. On the third day of the event, he noticed a beautiful young woman sitting beside him and felt instantly drawn to her. They connected through mutual prayers, and from that moment, a remarkable bond began to form. The young woman's name was Zion Perry, a senior at MIT. Initially, she had no intention of traveling such a long distance for the event, but her best friend had persistently encouraged her to go. Eventually, she agreed, albeit reluctantly. At the time, her friend joked, "Think of it as a mini vacation. You never know. Something unexpected might happen." That joke turned out to be prophetic. Later, the two attended 2 more church events together. By May, even though they had only met in person 3 times, their online conversations grew increasingly close. Their bond deepened quickly, and they officially began dating. Kevin was deeply in love with Perry. He often drove to MIT to visit her, and together they traveled, dined out, and created countless sweet memories. In August 2020, after graduating from MIT, Perry decided to pursue her PhD at Yale University. This meant she could finally live in the same city as Kevin. Once Perry moved to New Haven, the couple spent more and more time together. They visited scenic spots nearby and enjoyed a stable, loving relationship. Kevin's mother was overjoyed and completely approved of her future daughter-in-law. On January 30th, 2021, shortly after their 1-year anniversary, Kevin summoned the courage to propose to Perry in the snow at East Rock Park. Perry said yes without hesitation. They shared their joyful moment on social media and received an outpouring of congratulatory messages from friends. Had nothing gone wrong, they would have soon walked down the aisle. Confident in their future, they began planning their life together. But just 1 week later, tragedy struck. A sudden shooting brought everything to a devastating end. Around 8:30 p.m. on February 6th, 2021, the streets of New Haven were silent under a thick blanket of snow. Few people were out. Suddenly, a series of gunshots ripped through the cold night air. Some nearby residents, alarmed by the gunfire, immediately called the police. 15 minutes later, officers arrived at the scene, at the intersection of Lawrence Street and Nichols Street in the East Rock neighborhood. There, they found a silver Toyota Prius parked in the middle of the street with its hazard lights flashing. Not far from the car lay a young man, motionless, in a pool of blood. A preliminary examination revealed that the victim had been shot multiple times in the head. There were powder burns on the left side of his face, indicating he had been shot at close range. At the scene, police recovered 8 .45 caliber shell casings. The victim was soon identified as Kevin. The shooter had been meticulous and calculated, leaving behind no clues other than the spent shells. Because several people had heard the shots, police conducted interviews and reconstructed what had happened. At around 8:30 p.m., a dark-colored SUV rear-ended Kevin's silver Toyota Prius. Kevin turned on his hazard lights, got out of the car, and walked toward the vehicle behind him, presumably to exchange information. At that moment, someone inside the SUV fired 2 shots at him, but the shooter didn't flee right away. He exited the vehicle and fired 6 more shots into Kevin, who was already on the ground, before backing the SUV away and disappearing into the night. Initially, based on these witness accounts, police theorized that Kevin may have encountered an enraged driver and was killed after a traffic dispute escalated. However, when investigators examined the damage to Kevin's Prius, they found this theory questionable. There was only a small scratch on the rear of the car, barely noticeable unless examined closely. It looked more like the other vehicle's front license plate had been loose and bent upon contact. Given how minor the collision was, it seemed unlikely that such a trivial fender bender could trigger a murder. Moreover, there were no signs of a heated argument between the two parties. Police also recovered surveillance footage from a nearby camera that had captured the entire shooting incident. Unfortunately, the video quality was poor, too blurry to clearly identify the vehicle behind Kevin's or reveal the shooter's face. The only things clearly recorded were Kevin's agonizing cry before collapsing and the piercing sound of gunfire. Combining witness statements and the video, investigators concluded that the shooter appeared to have a specific target in mind. The initial 2 shots weren't enough. He went on to fire 6 more. This didn't look like a random road rage incident. It felt personal. As mentioned earlier, Kevin was a cheerful, warm-hearted student who never had conflicts with anyone, so a revenge motive seemed highly unlikely. Financially, though he owned a home, he was still a student with limited savings. As for relationships, he and Perry were in a happy and stable engagement. They had just gotten engaged days earlier. Nothing suggested trouble. With those 3 major motives ruled out, revenge, money, and love, the case became increasingly difficult. Police turned to Perry, Kevin's fiancée. Upon hearing the news of Kevin's murder, she was devastated. Just hours before, they had been together, and now he was gone. Holding back tears, she recounted their day on February 6th. That day, we spent almost the entire day together. We started off by ice fishing at Silver Lake nearby. In the afternoon, we came back to my apartment for dinner. Later, we went out to buy some snacks. Around 8:20 p.m., after a warm goodbye hug, he drove off alone. Who could have imagined that just minutes later he would be gone forever? The crime scene was only 2 blocks from Perry's apartment. She said she even heard the gunshots that night. At that point, the police still had no leads on the shooter. But just as the investigation was stalling, a sudden tip broke the case wide open. At around 11 a.m. on February 7th, the day after the murder, an employee at Abba's, a fast food restaurant in North Haven, called the police in a panic. "Hello, I work at Abba's in North Haven. We just found a gun and maybe 10 boxes of ammunition." The caller said he had discovered 3 bags in the bushes near the restaurant. Inside were a firearm, ammunition, 7 loaded magazines, and other items. Officer Mills from the North Haven Police Department responded to the scene immediately. Upon seeing the items, he got a bad feeling. Along with the gun and ammo, there was a yellow jacket, a black document folder, and a pale-colored plastic bag. Something about these items seemed familiar. In fact, just hours earlier, around dawn that same day, a security guard from a local scrap metal yard in North Haven had reported to police that a vehicle had crashed through their property, circled around, and eventually got stuck on an abandoned railroad track. Because of the freezing weather, heavy snow, and the car being stuck in an isolated, inactive area, police had not treated it as urgent. It wasn't until about 5 hours later that Officer Mills and a colleague arrived at the scene to investigate. When officers arrived at the scene, they found an Asian man anxiously waiting near the railroad tracks. He calmly explained that he had gotten lost and accidentally driven onto the tracks. He asked if the police could help him get the vehicle off so he could drive home. Given the situation, the officers didn't have a better solution. They advised the man to head to the nearby Best Western Hotel while they arranged for a tow truck to bring the vehicle there. He would just need to cover the towing fee. During the interaction, Officer Mills noticed a yellow jacket on the passenger seat, a black document folder, and a pale-colored plastic bag in the back seat. Everything seemed ordinary and unremarkable. The Asian man was polite, composed, fully cooperative, and had all the proper documents. There were no other suspicious individuals in the vehicle, and nothing stood out. Most importantly, at that point, the North Haven police had not yet received word about the shooting in New Haven. So they handled the case as routine and arranged for the dark blue SUV with license plate AE33336 to be towed to the Best Western. The next morning, just as news about the New Haven shooting reached the North Haven police, another report came in. Someone had found a discarded gun and ammunition. Officer Mills immediately recognized the items as those he had seen the previous night. It became clear that the Asian man from the stuck vehicle had likely dumped them and could be the suspect. Mills alerted the New Haven police, and the two departments began working together to locate the man. Hotel staff confirmed that he had checked into room 276 and had not yet checked out. Officers rushed to the room, but they were too late. The room was empty, the bed neatly made, and no one was there. The SUV that had been towed to the hotel? Gone. Clearly, the man had fled. Fortunately, Officer Mills had recorded the man's driver's license information that night. His identity was quickly confirmed. Pan Qingxuan, a 30-year-old man of Chinese descent. Although the .45 caliber bullets found near the restaurant matched the shell casings recovered at the crime scene, ballistics analysis revealed that the Ruger .45 caliber semi-automatic pistol found in the bushes was not the murder weapon. And since Mills's report was still based on suspicion, not hard evidence, police couldn't take immediate action. Instead, they began digging into Pan Qingxuan's background. What they found stunned investigators. This man was no ordinary suspect. He was a brilliant PhD graduate from MIT, specializing in computer science. Pan Qingxuan was born on April 16, 1991, in Shanghai, China. He later immigrated with his family to the state of Massachusetts, USA. From a young age, he was known for his intelligence, academic excellence, and drive. His teachers often praised him, saying, "This student is destined for great things." In 2009, at the age of 18, he represented the United States at the International Mathematical Olympiad in Germany and won a silver medal. From there, his academic path was smooth and highly successful. He was accepted into the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he majored in computer science. After earning his undergraduate degree, he continued directly into the PhD program. At the time of the investigation, he had completed all required coursework for the doctorate and had already co-authored several research papers with his advisor. The only thing left was to finish his dissertation and defend it to earn his PhD. In addition, he was working as a research assistant at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. Among his peers and colleagues, he was widely regarded as a genius. With credentials like his and a mind like his, if Pan was indeed the perpetrator, he would not be easy to apprehend. Naturally, the top priority was to locate him and uncover the truth. But Pan had completely vanished. His phone was turned off. His bank and credit cards showed no activity. Police suspected such a clean disappearance couldn't be done alone. Someone had to be helping him, and the most likely candidates were his parents, Pan Hao and Huang Hong. Investigators shifted their attention to his parents and soon discovered that Pan had contacted them after the incident. In the early morning hours of February 11th, a surveillance camera at a store in Georgia captured footage of Pan's father and a man believed to be Pan Qingshuan. However, due to pandemic protocols, both were wearing masks, so a 100% positive identification wasn't possible. Police eventually located Pan's parents in the state of Georgia. When questioned, they claimed to know nothing about their son's situation. They said their son had called asking for help, so they drove to Connecticut to pick him up. After that, he left on his own and didn't say where he was going. Authorities strongly suspected the parents were secretly helping Pan evade capture. Under a grand jury subpoena, the couple was compelled to hand over communication records and bank transaction histories. Federal investigators and the FBI reviewed the records and found something significant. After the incident, the couple had begun making frequent large cash withdrawals, typically $5,000 to $10,000 at a time. This raised immediate red flags. When asked about the purpose of these withdrawals, both parents refused to explain and invoked the Fifth Amendment, declining to answer any questions regarding their son. Although police suspected them of aiding and abetting a fugitive, the lack of direct evidence meant they could not yet press charges and had to continue monitoring their actions. Meanwhile, forensic results from the SUV and recovered items, sent in earlier for analysis, finally came back. The findings were conclusive. Pan's fingerprints were all over the inside and outside of the SUV. The yellow jacket contained his DNA and traces of gunpowder residue. The black document folder, the car's door handle, and a gray knit cap all carried both Pan's DNA and traces of Kevin's blood. The vehicle's GPS system had been hacked, rendering its tracking function useless, something authorities believed Pan likely did himself. At this point, police finally had enough solid evidence to confirm that Pan Qingshuan was the shooter. On February 26th, the New Haven Police Department officially issued an arrest warrant for Pan, charging him with first-degree murder. Although the case had gained national attention and was closely followed by the media, Pan proved to be exceptionally cunning. For nearly 2 months, police were unable to uncover any trace of his whereabouts. Some even suspected that he had fled the country. By April, Interpol had issued a red notice for Pan Qingshuan, requesting international law enforcement assistance in locating and arresting him. Meanwhile, U.S. federal authorities continued closely monitoring Pan's parents. One day, they suddenly rented a car, despite already owning a vehicle. This raised immediate red flags for investigators. Why rent a car if you have your own? Clearly, something wasn't right. On May 4th, Pan's parents, accompanied by another couple, went on what appeared to be a vacation. But with their son internationally wanted, why would they be in the mood for travel? Investigators suspected the vacation was just a cover for helping him. Police kept them under surveillance and followed them to North Carolina, where they checked into a Super 8 motel. Officers didn't approach immediately. They waited until the group checked out before quietly investigating. The motel staff reported that around 8 p.m. on May 7th, a middle-aged woman had borrowed his personal phone to make a call. The incident was captured on surveillance footage. Upon reviewing the footage, police confirmed that the woman was Huang Hong, Pan's mother. Her decision not to use her own phone or even the motel phone, but instead to borrow someone else's personal device, strongly suggested suspicious intent. Although she deleted the call history afterward, this was like deleting a shortcut on a computer desktop. The actual file remained. Police obtained the phone records from the telecom provider and traced the call's recipient to an apartment located about 6 miles from Alabama State University. After days of surveillance on May 14, 2021, police confirmed that Pan was living in that apartment under the alias Henry. Given his potential access to firearms and high flight risk, law enforcement assembled a team of over 20 officers to fully surround the building. They anticipated a possible standoff, perhaps even a desperate, violent confrontation like many fugitives facing arrest. But what happened next surprised everyone. When Pan opened the door and saw the officers, he froze for just a second before calmly saying, "I'm the person you're looking for." The calm surrender was completely unexpected. A search of the apartment revealed Pan's father's passport, 7 SIM cards, multiple cell phones, $19,000 in cash, a laptop, and other personal belongings. Thus ended the nearly 3-month manhunt that had captured nationwide attention. Pan was then extradited back to Connecticut to stand trial. Notably, since his arrest, Pan has continued to claim he is innocent. Given that his parents are worth millions of dollars and the high risk that he could attempt to flee again, the New Haven Superior Court set bail at $20 million, a record-breaking amount for the state of Connecticut. On February 27, 2024, the trial of Pan Qingxuan officially began. Prior to that, he had repeatedly claimed mental health issues, and combined with delays caused by the pandemic, the proceedings were postponed for over 2 years. Perhaps realizing there was no escape, Pan changed his stance in court. After maintaining a not guilty plea for 2 years, he chose to enter a plea deal. In exchange for avoiding a life sentence, he agreed to plead guilty in return for a 35-year prison term. In court, he delivered a cold, emotionless apology without ever revealing his motive. What I'm reading today is about my actions and their horrific consequences. I apologize for what I did. I'm sorry to everyone who was affected. On April 23rd, the judge handed down the final sentence. 35 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Kevin's grieving mother broke down, saying the punishment was far too light. I've lost everything. I'll never get the chance to hold my son again. Though the case has officially concluded, the public remains deeply curious about Pan's motive. The prevailing theory is that he had an unhealthy obsession with Perry, and when he saw that she had gotten engaged to Kevin, he meticulously plotted the murder. However, this theory has its inconsistencies. Prior to Kevin's death, 4 other shootings had occurred in the same area. On December 11th, 2020, January 15th, February 5th, and the night of February 6th, 2021. At each scene, 45 caliber shell casings were found, matching the ones recovered at Kevin's murder site, but no one had been injured. It appeared as though someone had been firing randomly. Further investigation later confirmed that Pan was responsible for all 4 incidents. He had repeatedly used test drives as a pretext to obtain vehicles from local dealerships, hacked the vehicle's GPS systems to disable tracking, and carried out the shootings. Interestingly, in the first 3 incidents, he returned the vehicles without raising suspicion. But on February 6th, he took another test drive around noon, and that same day, he killed Kevin. According to police analysis, Pan likely staged the earlier shootings to make Kevin's death appear like just another random act of street violence, rather than a targeted, premeditated murder. If true, this directly contradicts the assumed motive of jealousy or revenge. After all, Kevin didn't propose to Perry until January 30th, but Pan's pattern of behavior had begun weeks earlier. Still, another disturbing possibility remains, that Pan had long harbored a twisted obsession with Perry. When he learned she was in a serious relationship, that obsession may have turned to rage. Using his intellect and technical skills, he may have engineered what he thought was a perfect crime. Even so, investigators admitted one uncomfortable truth. Had Pan's car not accidentally gotten stuck on the railroad tracks, they might never have caught him. This final detail raises an unsettling point. Pan's SUV got stuck around 9 p.m., shortly after the murder. And yet, he waited at the scene for more than 5 hours, until 2 a.m., when police arrived to assist with the tow. During all that time, he didn't try to flee. In my opinion, Pan clearly knew that if he fled, the evidence left in the vehicle would quickly lead to his identification. He likely believed the 4-stage shootings he had orchestrated were flawless, with no loose ends. That confidence, combined with his assumption that investigators would see Kevin's death as just another random act of violence, was what made him gamble on staying put. As for Pan's parents, police attempted to charge them with obstruction of justice and aiding and abetting a fugitive. But due to the lack of concrete evidence, no formal charges were ever brought. Moreover, given Pan's intelligence, it's possible he deliberately concealed his criminal actions from them, only asking for money, thus creating a legal buffer that kept his parents in a legally gray area. Kevin's funeral was held 11 days after his murder at a church in New Haven. Family, friends, church members, fellow students, and faculty from Yale University gathered to honor his memory. Pastor Chen Tong, who led the service, shared something heartbreaking. He had originally expected to officiate Kevin's wedding, not his funeral. Considering Kevin had served in the military and was still a member of the Army National Guard, he was laid to rest with honor at the Connecticut State Veterans Cemetery in Middletown. In the end, this wasn't just a tragic murder. It was a collision between light and darkness, between genius and moral collapse. One man, Kevin Jiang, had dedicated his life to faith, service, and love. The other, Pan Qingxuan, possessed a mind many called genius. But that brilliance became a weapon when twisted by obsession, jealousy, or perhaps something even darker. Pan believed he had created the perfect crime. He choreographed randomness, misdirection, and silence. But what he never anticipated was a tiny misstep, a vehicle stuck on frozen railroad tracks in the middle of the night, a seemingly insignificant clue. And perhaps we are left with a chilling reminder that the line between brilliance and destruction, between love and madness, is far thinner than we think.